Tonight on Reporting Scotland, the NHS is doing less with more resources, according to the latest analysis. As Neil Gray takes over as Health Secretary after Michael Matheson's resignation, the situation facing him is stark. Also on tonight's programme, we hear from a woman who had a prepayment gas meter forcibly installed in her home while she was away over debts she didn't have.
I wasn't owing them and I was being harassed and bombarded with letters every time that I should pay, so it was really frustrating.
It comes after Ofgem allowed 3 energy suppliers to restart the practice of forced installations.
Coming up in the sport, Scotland are aiming to make it 2 wins from 2 in the Six Nations, but face a France side desperate for a victory to save their campaign.
And ahead of Super Bowl weekend, we meet the women playing American football in East Kilbride. Hello, I'm Sally Magnuson. Welcome to Friday's programme. The NHS is getting more money and has more doctors and nurses than before the pandemic, yet it's treating fewer people. That's the stark picture faced by the new Health Secretary Neil Gray on his first day in the job after the resignation yesterday of Michael Matheson. And we'll look at the questions that remain about that resignation in a moment. But first to what is an extremely sobering report from the economic think tank, the Institute for Fiscal Studies. It says the NHS treated 21% fewer elective inpatient admissions than before the pandemic. That might be anything from a knee replacement to a hernia. Yet, the amount of money going into the NHS in the same period increased by 10% to just over £3,000 per person. Our political correspondent David Wallace-Lockhart has more.
Health secretaries past and present. Michael Matheson on the right resigned yesterday. Neil Gray on the left took over. A report on the health service from the influential Institute for Fiscal Studies spelled out the challenges Mr Gray now faces. They say productivity is a problem. The NHS in Scotland is getting less bang for its buck.
I think this should be one of the highest priorities for the new Health Secretary. NHS and health spending is one of the largest things the Scottish Government, or most governments, do. And when you have lower productivity, that means you're getting less for your money. And given the really challenging economic and fiscal situation the Scottish Government faces, really trying to understand and improve that NHS productivity is a really crucial issue.
The IFS found between April and June last year, compared to pre-pandemic, the NHS in Scotland handled 8% fewer emergency admissions and treated 21% fewer pre-arranged inpatient admissions. This is despite what the IFS called a substantial increase in staff by last September, including 11% more consultants and 16% more junior doctors. The Scottish Conservatives launched their NHS blueprint this afternoon.
We're looking at making efficiencies within the NHS. We've been speaking today about reducing the number of boards that cover Scotland. We've been looking at other areas where we can reduce those inefficiencies within NHS Scotland. We've been looking at areas where we want to increase spending, so we want to see the proportion of the health budget for GPs going from about 10% to 12%. That would equate to about £242 million. We want to see that 1,000 additional GPs recruited across Scotland.
Labour say the government has taken their eye off the ball.
There's real pressure on the NHS just now. Services are under strain, staff are suffering as a result of that, and we've witnessed SNP ministers who frankly were more distracted by the sleaze and scandal going on than they were about delivering for the NHS.
We asked to speak with the new Health Secretary, but he was unavailable. A spokesperson said, "We will continue to work with NHS boards and stakeholders to enhance patient care through redesign and transformation, including alternatives to hospital care where appropriate." Fixing the NHS is one thing, but the First Minister is still facing questions about why he stuck by his former Health Secretary throughout his iPad scandal.
He asked for due process and an investigation to take place. That investigation drawing to a conclusion, of course, he wrote to me to say that he was going to stand down. I accepted his resignation. I was delighted to put together a really strong team that's going to deliver for the priorities of the people of Scotland.
That new team is now in place. Health is just one challenge to be getting on with.
David joins me now. Michael Matheson referenced actually the problems facing the NHS in his resignation letter.
He did, and we should start by saying that problems in the NHS isn't a Scotland-only phenomenon. Across the UK, the system is struggling at points, but the IFS today were looking specifically at Scotland. And as you said, Michael Matheson did talk about the struggling health service in his resignation letter. He said the NHS required major reform to ensure there's a sustainable health service going forward, and he said Humza Yousaf he felt was supportive of this kind of reform. But that's quite a warning from a health secretary to give on the way out, and perhaps got a bit lost yesterday in the other chaos surrounding Michael Matheson's resignation. So the job of health secretary now falls to Neil Gray. He's a close ally of the First Minister. He's quite highly thought of in the SNP in government, but certainly this will be the biggest political challenge of his career. Now he takes over to try and fix some of those issues the IFS have been speaking about today.
You talked about the chaos surrounding Michael Matheson's resignation. Is there any more clarity today about why he went when he did?
No, and there's elements of Michael Matheson's resignation, especially when it comes to timing, which perhaps still today seem a bit strange. Michael Matheson now has a draft report about his iPad use that's come from Scottish Parliament's corporate body. But interestingly, when he resigned yesterday, he hadn't got hold of that draft report yet. And yesterday's resignation came at a bit of an inconvenient time for Humza Yousaf. It was about an hour before First Minister's questions at the most politically stressful time of the week, when Humza Yousaf was just about to have to go into the chamber at Holyrood and take questions from opposition politicians. And it was on a day where Labour was making a massive U-turn on its pledge to spend £28 billion a year on green industries. That has now been scaled back quite a bit. There would have been difficult questions for Scottish Labour on that. There still were, but a lot of the political oxygen immediately turned to Michael Matheson. So interesting timing there. The public should see the report into Michael Matheson's iPad use at some point down the line. That may still be some way off because the investigation could potentially run for some time, and perhaps that will shed some light on why he went when he did.
David Wallace-Lockhart, thank you very much indeed. Scottish Power has apologised to a woman who had a prepayment meter forcibly installed in her home over a non-existent £2,000 debt. Favour Asante from Glasgow was on holiday when her energy provider entered her home, even though she'd been topping up regularly. This comes after Ofgem allowed 3 energy suppliers to restart the practice of forcible installations. Hope Webb reports.
For Favour, these energy bills are a reminder of a stressful time. For years, Scottish Power wrongly believed she owed them thousands of pounds.
I wasn't owing them, and I was being harassed and bombarded with letters every time that I should pay, so it was really frustrating.
Scottish Power insisted Favour had a monthly credit meter, when in fact she was using pay-as-you-go. In 2022, another prepayment meter was forcibly installed while she was visiting family in Ghana.
They never left us with any emergency voucher or a card to top up. So my husband phoned me that this is what he saw and there's no gas whatsoever. So he was sitting in the cold for a few days.
Last year, the practice of forced installations was paused, but now 3 energy suppliers are allowed to restart them under new regulations. Under the new rules, energy suppliers must attempt to contact a customer 10 times before action is taken. A prepayment meter shouldn't be installed in homes where a customer is over 75, where kids are under the age of 2, and also if anyone in the home lives with a terminal illness or severe health condition.
We know a disproportionate number of our community members, specifically the vulnerable ones, are on prepayment meters.
The STAR project in Paisley is trying to prevent any future forcible installations. The team here advise community members on how to work with their energy suppliers. Angela is a local mum who has fallen into debt after struggling to pay her fuel bills.
The duvets come into the living room and, big thick jumpers, we all curry up on the couch. I've ended up with dampness and stuff like that in the house. I've had it before in the house. So obviously during the cold months you don't want to open your windows or anything like that. So usually in winter we put duct tape around the windows.
Been going in the background for a while.
Some customers prefer prepayment meters as it helps them understand exactly how much they're spending on gas and electricity. But project leader Heather says vulnerable people should have the choice.
The safety net element of they need to contact you at least 10 times and they need to do it, that is no kind of support for the community that are worried about it. That doesn't make them feel better, because if you are finding yourself in financial crisis, you're not answering the phone and you're not opening your letters.
In the last few days, Scottish Power has written off all of Favour's outstanding debts. The company says it's committed to adhering to the strict new licence conditions Ofgem has put in place. A spokesperson said, "We apologise for the inconvenience and frustration Ms Asante has experienced. We've rectified the billing error and have removed the outstanding amount on her account." Campaigners continue to fight for a ban on the forced fitting of prepayment meters, but that can only be introduced by government ministers. Hope Webb reporting Scotland.
Some of the day's other stories now. A murder trial has heard that Emma Caldwell's blood was found on a quilt seized by police searching a Turkish cafe 18 years ago. Forensic scientist Amanda Pirrie said she couldn't determine how the two small bloodstains got there or whether Emma had been attacked inside the cafe in Glasgow's Bridge Street. The accused, Ian Packer, says 4 other men were responsible for her murder. Glasgow High Court heard that DNA evidence from the case didn't establish whether Mr Packer or the 4 men had been involved in her death. The Conservative MSP Donald Cameron will stand down from the Scottish Parliament to take up a place in the House of Lords. He's been appointed as a junior minister in the Scotland office. The position's unpaid. Originally from Lochaber, he has been a member of the Scottish Parliament since 2016, representing the Highlands and Islands region. 2 rescue dogs and their handlers are to receive a special award in recognition of their achievements. Rogue, a Belgian Malinois, and Border Collie Bowie, along with their husband and wife handlers Paul and Sam Noble, are based in Braemar. The team passed an intensive Search and Rescue Dog Association training course in a year, when it usually takes 2 to complete. Subsidies for farmers are being overhauled as the Scottish Government devises a new system to replace the EU's Common Agricultural Policy. But today, the First Minister told NFU Scotland's Spring Conference that they'll still receive the majority of their funding to support farm businesses directly. That's a disappointment to some environmental groups who wanted more of the cash to be used for tackling climate change. Our Environment and Rural Affairs correspondent Kevin Keane has more.
Well, this might seem like an issue that just affects farmers, but actually it's really important because it involves a huge amount of money, £620 million a year to be precise, of taxpayers' money, public money that you and I contribute to, all going to this single industry. And the debate over the last couple of years is around how that money will be split between helping farmers and also tackling some environmental issues. So at the moment, about 80% of it is direct payments that go straight into the bank accounts of farmers to help them support their businesses. What NFU Scotland, the farming union, has been saying is that that funding needs to stay the same. Otherwise, they believe that many rural farmers will go out of business. But actually, a lot of environmental groups have been saying we should use this opportunity as we're creating a new system post-Brexit to turn it on its head. So something like 20% for farm support, but a much bigger pot, around 80%, for these targeted environmental schemes. So things that help to tackle climate change and also things like nature loss and wildlife habitats vanishing as well. Now, what we've ended up with, the Scottish Government announced today, was 70% for farmers and 30% for these targeted environmental schemes. And although that's not what either side had wanted, it does much more heavily favour the farmers' demands. And so I asked the Minister whether or not in a climate emergency this was a wasted opportunity.
It's not going to be a like for like, and we will have the enhanced conditionality there, so that funding will be doing more. It's not going to be the status quo going forward, and they need to be clear on that, as well as the fact it is a starting point. And with the flexibility in a future framework, if we're not seeing the results we want to see, that can change and that can adjust in the future, compared with the system that we have in the moment, where it's just not possible to do that.
Well, although it's not exactly what they wanted, NFU Scotland seems reasonably happy with what's been promised now, not least because it provides some certainty to their members as they plan what's ahead for their businesses. Environmental groups, though, less happy. RSPB Scotland, for example, saying that although this is a small step in the right direction, it's nowhere near enough in the middle of a climate emergency.
Kevin Keane there. Tonight's main news again. A leading think tank says Scotland's NHS is handling fewer patients but costing more.
And coming up in the sport, Scotland are aiming to make it 2 wins from 2 in the Six Nations, but face a France side desperate for a victory to save their campaign.
A few days to go until millions around the globe tune in for this year's Super Bowl. And a fair few of the fans will be here in Scotland. In fact, some of them do more than watch American football, as Elle Duffy has been finding out.
Ready, down, set.
Wednesday is training day. The group of women here play for the East Kilbride Pirates, one of just 2 female American football teams in Scotland.
See when that ball's in the air and you just see it and you know you light up, so you do, it's like an adrenaline you get and happiness, and it's when that ball's in your hands and you're running, your thinking head's on and you just make decisions that you never thought you could ever make.
This is Abby Coleman. At 17 years old, she's the team's youngest player and helped take Team GB to victory last year in the European Championships. And now she has her eyes set on the Olympics.
It's like a massive goal for me, which is why I've started training now, because in 4 years' time I'm sure I'll be 20, so it's like my prime. So I want to train now and get like just better.
A little more oomph, yeah?
There are school teachers, bus drivers and full-time carers. And for some, playing for the Pirates is a release.
Yes! Much better.
Honestly, it's basically just like a big family. You get, even if it's only 2 hours at training, you get to know them every week in, week out. You travel with them, so you get to know them even better. I can't even describe how much football has impacted my life, but it's honestly a lifesaver for me.
Drive!
It's such a buzz. It's really hard to explain unless you're kind of like on the field or like in that situation, you know. Like the great thing about American football is if something goes wrong, you can just reset. There's no need to get your head down, and you know, people are really great at raising each other's spirits.
These women have been playing here for around 5 years, but recently there's a whole new wave of interest. It's partly due to Taylor Swift. She's dating Travis Kelce, a prominent NFL player.
I've got a young daughter. She likes to listen to Taylor Swift, but she's putting 2 and 2 together and getting 10 and thinking, you know, Daddy's going to meet Taylor Swift soon because he plays American football. But I think the Taylor Swift hype has been fantastic for the sport. The amount of attention and focus she's bringing from people who would never have looked twice at American football before is incredible, and it's benefiting the sport.
But while Taylor might be watching from the bleachers, the women here in East Kilbride want nothing more than to be on that field. Elle Duffy, reporting Scotland.
Well, Lewis, have you ever tried your hand or your body at that?
I have actually played a bit of American football, not competitively, just throwing a ball around. But I thought the Super Bowl was big until Taylor Swift got involved. It's massive now.
Yeah, no, it really is. And they're tough in East Kilbride, aren't they?
They certainly are. But there's bigger things as well this weekend for Scotland fans.
Yes. Scotland and France.
Yes, and Edinburgh is swarming with France fans, absolutely. Thank you, Sally. Yes, hello there. Co-captain Rory Darge says Scotland are ready for a huge challenge when they take on a France side who'll be putting their Six Nations campaign on the line at Murrayfield tomorrow. The French know only a victory will do after defeat at home to Ireland, while the Scots are aiming to make it 2 wins from 2 following last weekend's extraordinary victory over Wales in Cardiff. Andy Burke reports.
The French fans arrive in Edinburgh hoping to see their team ignite their Six Nations campaign, but perhaps also with a little trepidation. After defeat to Ireland last weekend, they know anything other than a victory over Scotland tomorrow, and their title hopes are over.
I think it's going to be very difficult for French, because the last time was very difficult against Ireland, and the Scots were very good first half. So we'll see.
We have to win.
Yes, of course. It's an obligation.
Since the game of last week, which didn't very good, and but France we're gonna win.
We have to win because we did. I think it was not a good match for us last week.
Well, Scotland come into this match having beaten Wales in round 1, their first victory in Cardiff in 22 years, albeit they did have to survive a pretty major second half wobble. This week they face one of the best teams in the world, as the French always are. They possess some of the greatest talents in the game, but they have found Edinburgh a difficult place to come in recent times. Since 2016, Scotland have played France 7 times at Murrayfield in all competitions, coming out on top on 5 occasions.
It's always been good games to be involved in. I've always loved playing them. Obviously it's physical, it's a big physical challenge, but that's what rugby's about, and that's what we enjoy about the game. But also it gets real close. I remember at Saint Etienne, that was maybe a 2-point game or something. It wasn't, and then the one over here as well was won in the last minute. They were putting a lot of pressure on the line in the World Cup warm-up. So like you say, they're always exciting.
You made your first Scotland start, I think it was, against France 2 years ago, and you got your try. What do you remember about that game?
Well, the anthems initially. That was sort of goosebump moment because first game at Murrayfield, like you said. The try, obviously, in terms of moments, that probably right up there in my career. I don't score many tries, and it's not a massive part of my game, but to score at Murrayfield in front of family, in front of the home crowd was special.
Scotland will need to produce some more special moments if they are to overcome France and go 2 from 2 in the Six Nations. Andy Burke reporting Scotland, Murrayfield.
To the football now, and it's Scottish Cup 5th round weekend, and it all gets started tonight as Greenock Morton host Motherwell at Capello. For us is Jonathan Sutherland.
First and foremost, we should be in for a fantastic game of football if the last games these sides played are anything to go by. Motherwell 5-0 winners in midweek against Ross County, and last weekend Greenock Morton 5-0 winners away at Dunfermline Athletic. Motherwell 8th in the Premiership, Morton 4th in the Championship. Morton's form is incredible, unbeaten in the last 12 matches. They've won 9 of those, and they have won the last 3 matches. So we're expecting a close encounter tonight. In fact, these sides have met 4 times in the last 6 years in cup competitions. All 4 occasions have been Motherwell victories, but those matches have been at Fir Park. Tonight is, of course, here at Capello, so we're expecting a very close encounter. We hope you'll join us at 7:15 on the BBC Scotland channel. You can also watch on the iPlayer and the BBC Sport website and app.
Staying with the Scottish Cup, and Rangers manager Philippe Clement says he is happy Willie Collum will referee his side's tie against Ayr United tomorrow night. The Ibrox club asked the Scottish FA not to involve the official in their matches following their defeat to Celtic in December. Collum was the VAR in that game, and Rangers thought he should have asked referee Nick Walsh to review a possible Alistair Johnston handball. It later emerged there was an offside in the build-up.
For me, there was a foul made. It was a clear handball. But I'm also not without fault. I make faults every day, probably. So I don't look at people, and if they make a mistake, that they are dead for life or something or whatever. No, this is a new game, new situation. So it's important to, and when we speak about history, not to live in the past. I think it's in life also really important.
Aberdeen boss Neil Warnock says a supermarket trip gave him an insight into the fans' passion for the club. The 75-year-old will take charge at Pittodrie for the first time tomorrow when the Dons face League Two side Bonnyrigg Rose in the Scottish Cup, a team eager to do themselves proud against Premiership opposition.
I went round Tesco's last night. I've never seen so many Aberdeen fans. So they all welcomed me. It was lovely. You know, it's. I think they know I'm just going to come and try and do the best I can, really. Possibly people thought I wouldn't come up here, but it was. I just think it's a nice challenge, if I'm honest.
It's so important that we enjoyed it. So obviously, as I said, there's no pressure on us. The boys have got to go and enjoy the day and enjoy the occasion, and hopefully we can give a good account of ourselves in the day as well.
Neil Warnock, always entertaining. And Sally, before I go, some news about St Mirren's appeal of James Bolton's red card. That was dismissed. So the club have said they're very disappointed and he'll miss the next 2 matches.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. And worth mentioning that the Super Bowl is at 11:30 p.m. On Sunday. Thanks very much. Now, on the BBC Scotland channel at 7 o'clock, Glasgow Grammy Award-winning music producer Blair Ferguson says it is possible to achieve success when you're based in Scotland.
I made the song without having ever met any of the people that I made it with originally, and that was in Scotland. You know, it's completely possible for anybody who is here to network online. I mean, with this day and age that we're living in with social media, it's entirely possible. Obviously, going over helps, and having that in-person relationship is very, very helpful. But it's completely possible from being here for anybody who wants to do it.
And that's coming up at 7 o'clock. But in the meantime, we have the weather with Chris.
Hi, Sally. Thanks very much indeed. Another wintry picture from one of our weather watchers. Just look at the snow building up there on the bird bath and on the garden furniture. You need to be inland, the high ground, to see some snow. For many, cloudy and wet. Very good evening to you. Once again, it's been a rather cloudy, quite wet and windy day across many parts of the country, but inland, still wintry. It's all being driven by this area of low pressure nearby. And whilst it will be bringing in some milder air, the cold air that we've had in recent days is sticking with us, certainly towards the north. So you can see on the air mass chart there, the cold air nearby. And as that weather front moves northwards, we'll continue to see some outbreaks of snow, chiefly on the higher ground. So we do have a Met Office yellow warning in force overnight tonight and for a good part of tomorrow, because you can see the rain pushing in as it pushes over the hills and the higher ground. There will be some snow, and it's a windy night, particularly across northern parts of the country, strong to near gale force winds. So some of that snow leading to blizzard type conditions on higher road routes in particular. Central and southern Scotland, cloudy and wet, outbreaks of rain here and quite chilly, certainly with temperatures in low single digits, the odd icy patch. Saturday. It's a pretty cloudy day, has to be said. Some outbreaks of rain. Initially, that wet weather, wintry on the high ground. For most, any wet weather, it will be of rain. Something a little bit brighter coming through, fingers crossed, through parts of Ayrshire, Dumfries and Galloway, South Lanarkshire and the borders. But you can see much of central Scotland staying cloudy. A few spots of rain or drizzle. Perhaps something a little bit brighter in towards the Isle of Skye there. Towards the far north and northeast, still those keen easterly winds with cloud and outbreaks of rain. And 3 degrees in Lowick there, quite a raw feel. For those hill walking or climbing, initially that wet weather will be falling as snow across the higher hills and mountains. Add on those strong winds, a severe wind chill at times, but the snow level tending to rise through the course of the day and hopefully something a little bit drier and brighter pushing in towards the southern uplands. As we head in towards tomorrow evening, we tend to say goodbye to a lot of that cloud and rain, still with us in the Northern Isles, a few showers towards the west coast, but many areas dry, light winds, some mist and fog, and that takes us to Sunday. And we've got 3 zones of weather on Sunday. Towards the west coast, showery with some cloud. Towards the east coast, cloudy with some rain. In between, something drier, hopefully a slice of something brighter as well, 5 to 8 Celsius. Next week, once again, dominated by areas of low pressure moving their way in off the Atlantic, bringing weather fronts, cloud, outbreaks of rain, but there will be some drier, brighter slots of weather at times, some sunshine, and it won't be as cold as of late, with temperatures most days by mid-afternoon up to around 8, maybe 9 degrees. That's the forecast for now.
Thanks very much indeed, Chris. Anne McAlpine will be here with your late news at around 10:30 tonight. But until then, from everyone in the team, do enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.